was coming out of college, I got a great job offer from Intel. It was a recession at the time in 91, 92. And I did have a few other job offers, but I always joke that one of them was to go do sales for a company that did paper business forms, like things in triplicate with different, goldenrod or mint colored, copies. Or I could go to work at Intel as a financial analyst. And I thought, well, that sounds interesting. They told me it's a lot like internal consulting. And so I took that thinking, well, I'll probably be there 2 to 5 years and then go get an MBA someday. And it just turned out there's a great similarity between what I love to do, which is grow and learn and add more to my plate, be challenged. And that was a lot of what the DNA in their culture is about is, you own your own career, you grow and go as high as possible, you do what you want. So I did 18 years in finance, and then I moved kind of sideways to be a general manager of one of the business units in the group that I was in, because I kind of fell in love with that part of the business, which was Internet of Things. A lot of innovation, a lot of new product ideas, not your stodgy old PC, laptop, data center business. And then after that, I moved into sales, also for Internet of Things. And sadly, that's where I got caught up in a global reorganization of sales where they eliminated my role. And I said, gosh, after having done all this experience, I think I'm not a lifer. I want to go do other things in life. And I feel like I've gotten as great training as I can at Intel. And it's now time to believe in my own skill set and move on my own. So I created a consulting practice where I was going to go work with retailers and help them deploy technology for value and really kind of drive growth in their business by adopting technology. And sadly, I got a lot of interesting meetings with retailers that didn't amount to much, and a lot of my paying revenue customers were startups. And I, at that point, had been an angel investor for 6 years and constantly jealous of the amount of traction and growth that these startups were seeing. And so as I kept consulting with them, I kind of got a feel for what the day-to-day was like at a startup. Obviously got to work with 5 or 6 of them, see the different personalities, cultures, products. And then a year into my consulting business, I got approached to be CEO of a startup. So I kind of went, oh, wow, that's, not typical. You don't usually get that knock on your door every day. So I decided to try it out. I was like, the odds were against me. 1 in 7 startups actually succeed and 6 fail. So I kind of told myself, okay, probably going into this to fail, but what could I learn from it? It'll be a huge experience. And sure enough, it was amazing. I helped the company raise $4.5 million. We turned on first revenue. We set up payroll, benefits, found an office, did all the kind of early stage startup activities. And what I learned is I can do this. I'm good at this. I kind of parted ways with the companies after 7 months. It wasn't a good fit. But what that taught me was, do I want to go back and regrow my consulting, book of business, or would I rather go find a different startup where I have a cultural alignment with the other founder, where I can believe in the business, I want to personally invest in the business and become a fairly large shareholder of whatever entity we create. And so as I was a month into that journey of doing a lot of networking, I met Michael Zal, and I really kind of hit it off with Michael. And what I loved about YellowBird was it kind of brought me back to my roots at Intel, where a very high safety culture. They spent a lot on safety. They valued it. They valued what it did for their employee base. And I said, what if we could take that level of safety and bring it to hundreds and thousands of companies nationwide in the United States, and at the same time enable amazing careers for these environmental health and safety workers, where they're technically super competent, brilliant people, just genuinely very caring, but they're not good marketers. They typically don't like to promote themselves, talk about how great they are, which is kind of what you got to do nowadays, at least digitally, to get your skill set known. And so that's what YellowBird's doing with our marketplaces. We're doing the mass marketing on what could be done, how affordable it is, and then we match them to these amazing professionals. So there's a lot of different roles that you play. I'm this, by title, Chief Operating Officer, but I today am the HR department, the accounting department, the finance department, operations, obviously. I partner directly with marketing. I partner with the product team, and I'm currently running the sales team as well. Now, eventually, as we grow and get bigger on our revenue front and more customers, more employees, we will be hiring leaders in to kind of be the point person on that. And I guess again, as an ego, you can't have an ego where you go, oh my gosh, this part of my job is being taken away from me. I look at that as awesome, because we're growing, and it means now that, someday when we hire a full-time, finance person, or a full-time accountant, or even full-time HR, that means like we've gotten so successful that I no longer have to do that as an eighth of my time, so I love that. I think, that to me as an investor in this company, that's success. But you do have to sometimes give yourself the pep talk, because having been at a big company where there's reorganizations and your roles change, and it's a lot of times viewed as a who won in the reorg and who lost, who are the people that grew scope and gained teams, and who are the ones that lost, who has the the kind of inside insight now. Obviously with a startup, you don't have any of that. I love that we're not political. We are a pretty flat organization. We look every week at what are the top issues that are facing the team, what's holding us back, what can we as a executive team do to make things go quicker and run smoother. The technologies don't change. I mean, I remember 10 plus, it's probably more like 15 years ago now, doing presentations about how servers were going to go the way of the dinosaur, and it was all going to move to this thing called the cloud, and we're all like joking, like, the cloud, seriously? Like, that sounds so nebulous. Like, who's going to believe in the cloud? And now, like, everything's based on cloud computing. So obviously all those technology fundamentals translate, they port over. But again, like, I have my hands in probably 15 different cloud-based systems, whether it be, Expensify for expense reporting, QuickBooks, Gusto for HR, and at Intel, I would basically use email, PowerPoint, and then there'd be service organizations that would do everything for me. And so it is really, again, you got to be okay with the context switching. For me, it's keep a very clear set of priorities, and then really look ahead. What's consistent for me is I keep the same practice of what I did at Intel, which is think of what are my big 2 things for the week. And kind of, I've got to be laser focused on making sure I just nail it on those 2 things, because there's 30 others that I'll never get to. The work is never done. I guess that's a consistent, there's always more you could be doing. But in a startup, especially being an owner founder, you have this like, oh, maybe if I just log on, at night and just do another hour or 2, I could get a few things done, be a jump ahead on the next day. But you do have to give yourself time to refuel and relax and recharge, so that you're not completely burnt out. Because it is one of these where, for me, it's okay, I got the 2 big things done, give myself some grace on that I didn't do 28 other little tiny things. I can get to that next week. I think, just the ambiguity on steroids. I mean, because there is no, I can just reach out in the corporate directory and ask somebody who's a peer in a similar job, how did you do this? I tell people there's no handbook on, even I could go talk to other COOs at startups, thanks to the cohort group we have, we're networking really well. But the issue is not every 2 companies are structured the same. So my COO role may pull in marketing and sales right now, somebody else's may not. And so again, no 2 jobs are exactly alike. Now, on very pointed topics, like, hey, when do I know how to trigger, sales tax for revenue in XYZ state? If I ask something that explicit to our cohort, I'm sure somebody else has figured that out. And they're usually very super helpful to help and or get a recommendation. That's what I think, has been my biggest thing, is go talk to some experts. So find the PR people who work with startups, find the tax accountants who work with startups, who know how to do this. There's even HR people that do fractional HR for startups. So what I love about that is they've kind of seen some of this and can bring some of those best practices to your startup and help you jumpstart, where you're at. And then really also thinking, I think for me, it's between our founder and I, there's no shortage of ideas. How do we start metering some of those ideas and saying, interesting thought, but maybe we put a pause on that one for 3 months because we're just so busy right now. We do need to be focused, and realizing that if we don't have that conversation, nobody will, because it has to start at the top, that it's okay for people to wave the flag and say, I am overwhelmed right now. The volume, I think we just did our year-end calculations, our gig volume went up 600% year over year. And while we've added people to the team, we haven't added 600%. So, these people are trying to do as much as they can. And there's sometimes, again, where we just need to say, you know what, let's put that project on hold for 3 months and really just do the day job well. Because the relationships we form with our pros on our platform and our companies that are using us for revenue, we want those to be amazing experiences. Well, I think for me, it's been a growth, and I don't want people to think I'm walking around with a big head, but a growth and confidence in myself that I am gaining so many skills that, again, God forbid, if somehow YellowBird ended up being another one of the 7 that fails, the 1 in 7 startups and 6, we're not the 1 in 7, we're 2 or 3, and we fail. I now have such marketable skills. I won't have to worry about my next opportunity. I just trust it to the universe that there will always be opportunities coming my way that will leverage the new skills that I've built. So the good news is I don't feel like I've been in a position where I'm doing the same old thing, in and out, solving the same problems, and been doing that 2 to 5 years, and now my skills are stale, so to speak. So there's always that, but given that, I look at that and just say, it's always kind of fun for me to run our strategy sessions and say, what can we try to predict, what big strategic questions we may need to answer this year to kind of unlock, because the growth is never nice and linear. It's jig-jaggedy, and then sometimes you got to take a big step up. And when you get to that new plateau, to then kind of get a lay of the land and say, now what do we need now that we're up here? How do we figure out either the resourcing we now need to finally bring in house, or the skills that we just have never had before that we need to add to our, like we just added some folks around data analytics and AI, because we're getting enough data on our platform now that's an emerging need. And so it's the how do we keep looking for that next thing that might come to be a point holding us back. Hopefully they have the personal reserve, I will call it, to handle the fact that your salary is going to take a big hit. I mean, I would be lying if I said, yeah, I'm making exactly what I made at Intel. My base pay took a massive hit, like down to a nubbin. But now it's coming back because, again, we're 2.5 years in. Over time, as we raise more, the company grows, we can add back and start bringing executive salaries in line with the market. That said, my equity, and the value of the company has increased to where I'm making more, if you look at the whole enchilada, than what I ever made at Intel. And so, it's that cash wise, yes, I need to pay the bills, I need to pay our mortgage, the kids need braces or whatever. We need to make sure the basic needs on cash wise are taken care of, but it's like, don't look at just a paycheck and feel like that's what you're worth. You have to kind of, again, do the mental math of it's the whole equation, the equity, this is what I'm really doing it for. And in the 5 to 10 year horizon, I'm going to be way better off, both financially, but also in the skills I've grown and the things I've done. And what I joke is it's the health and well-being. My blood pressure's dropped 20 points, and I honestly have a smile on my face. I look forward to vacations, coming back to work, because I genuinely love what we're doing. I love our team, and I'm excited about it. And sometimes in a big corporate job, you kind of lose that. You kind of get beat down and feeling like, not again, this corporate process is going to get me in the next week or two. I think I did a pretty good job because the way the finance organization runs at Intel, they would make you move jobs every 2 years. As an analyst, and then when you became a manager, it was more like 3 to 4 years, and at the controller level, it was more like 5. But they did have a rotational program which introduced change and introduced new learning and new skills. You couldn't get too comfortable, so that was all good. I think for me, it was more have more confidence in my abilities. I think sometimes I was too risk averse to, that looks like a risky assignment, I don't know, and then kind of later kind of feeling like, shoot, I probably should have done that, but that said, I took some really risky stuff. I went to Denmark for 6 months and on an acquisition, and again, learned a ton in that process, but today that division got wound down and written off. So, it wasn't a huge commercial success, but I learned a ton out of that. So I would say I've always been very good about career planning. I would say maybe also make sure to develop that network and stay in touch. That really a lot of, it's not just the on the job skill factual learning, but it's also the network you build over time. And hopefully you keep that network, pruned and well maintained, and that you're depositing, value added things for your people in your network so that they look forward to hearing from you and not like, oh God, here comes Michelle. So I would say, yeah, make sure that you do invest some time in the strategic networking, as you grow your career.